Films in Focus with David Sterritt is underwritten by The Movie House, your destination for first-run Hollywood and independent movies, and a digital portal to the Met Opera, National Theatre Live, and special events worldwide in Millerton, New York, and on the web, themoviehouse.net.
David Sterritt is the editor-in-chief of the Quarterly Review of Film and Video, contributing writer at Cineast, film professor at the Maryland Institute College of Art, and Robin Hood Radio's very own critic. We're proprietary. That being said, he joins us weekly, the films Atlantics, The Report, and Marriage Story. I'm ready.
You're ready. Well, so am I. How are you doing this week, Jill?
I'm okay. I'm ready for number 3. I'm going to ask, did you like the Marriage Story?
Oh, we have to work our way up to that.
What was I afraid of?
Yeah.
All right,
no,
never mind.
We have to start with 2 other films, and then we'll get there. Don't be so impatient. I mean, you're not going to run out and see a movie right in the middle of our broadcast, are you?
It could happen.
You can wait a few minutes to find out whether Marriage Story is good. So let's first find out what I thought of Atlantics, because Atlantics is a very unusual movie, and I really wanted to touch on it because, among other things, it is a Senegalese movie, an African movie, and one of those rare African movies to actually make it to American theaters, although it is also on Netflix. Nowadays, the way I look at it, at least, there's some controversy about this in the world of movie theater proprietors who feel they're competing with, as they are competing with streaming video, and more movies, including some pretty important movies, are opening on streaming video as well as theaters. To me, it's all just one big movie scene, so I don't make a whole lot of distinction if a movie is opening in theaters at all. I regard it as a theatrical movie, even if it is opening at the same time on streaming video, as is the case with Atlantics. But as I say, the best and most interesting thing about Atlantics is that it is an African film which is getting into pretty widespread American distribution. And it's a very interesting movie, if not a great one. So it was co-written and directed by Matty Diop, who is a female filmmaker, and itself always cause for celebration because it is still an industry so dominated by men, and by white men, by the way. And here we have a female filmmaker of color who has made this film. And again, it is set in Senegal, which has, by the way, a great tradition of movie making. Some very important filmmaking is going on in Senegal over the years. So I'm glad to see that is happening again now. There's always a lot of French influence in Senegalese film, and that is the case here as well. The original title of this film is a French title, Atlantique. For some reason, it is known in English as Atlantics. And it is basically a thriller, but a very, very slow-moving kind of dark-toned thriller. That is to say, it's not an action thriller. It's more of a kind of a meditative thriller. And it begins in a suburb of a major city in Senegal, where there are a bunch of construction workers who are working on this very, very ultra super modern building, and they haven't been paid for months. And this is at the very beginning of the movie, and they are outraged and they are demanding their pay. But the person who is in charge of this whole project, this very rich and privileged person, is refusing to pay them and keeps promising, "I'll pay you soon," but never seems to do it. So they all decide that they are going to leave the country. They are going to go on a ship, and they are going to go somewhere else across the Atlantic for some kind of better living situation for them all. So they all take off. Now, one of these young men is very much in love with a young woman. Her name is Ada. And this young man, one of the members of this construction crew, whose name is Suleiman, is very much in love with Ada. And he doesn't want to leave her, but he feels he has to leave her because, again, he's got to find some sort of a better life. However, while the ship is crossing the ocean, it apparently is sunk, and all the people on board are apparently killed. This leaves Ada back home very, very upset. Now, she has another big problem, which is that she is engaged to another man named Omar, and her family is determined that she marry Omar because he's got a lot of money. So now the man she really loves has been killed in this disaster at sea, and her family has been pushing all along for her wedding to Omar, and then things start to get strange, because what happens is that Omar's bed, and Omar's again got a lot of money. It's quite a fancy bed, catches fire. The police suspect arson. They start to investigate, but then it turns out that maybe something supernatural is going on here. And this is about when the movie becomes a supernatural thriller. Now, I emphasize again that this is not an action film in any way. It's a very quiet, contemplative sort of a movie. It works by brooding atmosphere rather than by any sort of overt action. I found it a little bit hard to follow at times. Again, the story is unfolded in sort of an indirect way, but when it comes to mood and atmosphere, it is very, very effective. And again, it is just such a pleasure to have a respite from the usual run of Hollywood movies and even the usual run of sort of Western European movies that we do get in America, that I had a good time watching Atlantics, and I really want to make sure everybody knows it's out there. Again, it's in theaters, it's also streaming, and is definitely a movie worth catching up with if you want a film that is unusual in its origins and very unusual in its story. Now, for the rest of today's episode, Jill, I will talk about Adam Driver. Adam Driver is everywhere. I think that we could probably talk about the next year's worth of releases by talking about Adam Driver, because he seems to be in everything nowadays. Well, that's not true. But I do think he is in danger of becoming overexposed. When I first started seeing him back on the excellent TV series Girls, I thought he was a really interesting young actor. I still think he's a really interesting young actor, but my gosh, he is in so much that one wonders if one is one of these days going to get a little bit tired of seeing Adam Driver. That said, he is still very talented, he is very versatile, and he is in two movies I want to talk about now, The Report and then Marriage Story. I know you're chafing at the bit to get at Marriage Story, but I want to touch on The Report first. The Report was written and directed by Scott Z. Burns. Now, he is a very interesting filmmaker. I mean, he's written some of Steven Soderbergh's movies. Contagion is one, The Informant is another, and The Informant came out just about 10 years ago, and I think it's one of the best movies of the past 10 years. If people have not seen The Informant, written by Scott Z. Burns, directed by Steven Soderbergh, they should absolutely catch up with it. And it's quite an amazing movie, which deals very much with current affairs, as well as being just a terrific Matt Damon comedy. Scott Z. Burns has been involved with several movies starring Matt Damon. Scott Z. Burns was also a producer of The Inconvenient Truth, way back the Al Gore movie about climate change and the disasters that are heading our way there. So Scott Z. Burns, the point is a director and a producer and a screenwriter who really specializes in movies that deal with pressing current public concerns. And The Report definitely comes under that category. The Report stars Adam Driver as a real-life character and a guy named Daniel J. Jones. And at the beginning of the movie, he's a very young man basically looking for an internship. And he ends up, getting at the very beginning of the movie, rising up a little bit in the Washington, D.C. professional circles. That's what he is. He wants to be a congressional staffer. And he ends up, after a while, working for, and again, this is all real-life stuff. This is actual stuff, working for the California Senator Dianne Feinstein, working for her. And he gets his job, and he is asked to lead an investigation that Feinstein is spearheading into the CIA's torture of terrorist suspects after 9/11. And the more he probes into this, the more he investigates this, the more he examines this, the more Daniel J. Jones realizes that some very bad stuff went on, and that the CIA has been covering this stuff up, has been not presenting this to Congress the way they've been supposed to do, and that all kinds of bad stuff went on, and that it is not known, and that it is just that there's a massive cover-up going on. So that is what this movie is about. It is about this real, just not a Congress person, just an ordinary congressional staffer who is leading this investigation into the so-called enhanced interrogation techniques after 9/11, and finds out that the CIA was doing things which it was not allowed to do, and that it was then covering this stuff up and not reporting it to Congress. And when eventually a report is concluded, then the CIA and, by the way, the presidency are attempting to block the report, to undercut the report, to not allow the report to get up, and that is what this movie is about. Now, this movie is a real sort of a thriller. Again, it is not an action thriller. It is very much a political thriller. It is very fast-moving. very condensed, very dense. You have to pay really close attention as this movie goes along. But that said, it's really a very exciting movie in its way, and it deals again with such real and urgent stuff that it is, well, I just found it very compelling watching from beginning to end. Adam Driver is terrific. He's a really good actor, and this is a role that is just excellent for him because he plays a smart, driven young person, and I suspect that's what Adam Driver is as an actor. I also have to mention Annette Bening. Annette Bening plays Senator Dianne Feinstein, and she just appears to be Senator Dianne Feinstein. It is one of these cases where everything is exactly right in this portrayal, and she is just excellent. I also have to give a shout out to Michael C. Hall, who plays a very supporting role in the movie, but I have very fond memories of him from Dexter on TV and also totally from 6 Feet Under, maybe my all-time favorite TV series. It's wonderful to see him on the big screen again. So again, the report deals with real stuff, deals with it in a real and urgent way, and this is only the second movie that Scott Z. Burns has directed, but I certainly hope that his career continues to flourish because he has a real talent for making compelling movies about urgent, real-life subjects. And our final movie for today, Jill, the one you have been itching for me to get to, and that is Marriage Story, written and directed by Noah Baumbach. Noah Baumbach is a very gifted, no longer quite so young director, writer-director, and now he has made basically a sort of a comedy drama, maybe more drama than comedy, starring Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson. And at the very beginning of the movie, we have voiceovers from each of these two main characters, who are a husband and a wife. And at first, we have the husband, Charlie, saying all of these lovely things about why he loves his wife. And then we have a voiceover from the wife, Nicole, saying all these reasons why she loves her husband so much. And during this, we see a little montage of little snippets from their lives. And we get a very clear sense as to why Charlie loves his wife, Nicole, and why Nicole loves her husband, Charlie. And then we discover, and all this is just a few minutes into the movie, that all of this has been statements they have written as part of their imminent divorce proceedings. It's all the nice things they could think of to say about each other, but in fact they are heading into a divorce, and that divorce is what takes up the whole rest of the movie, Marriage Story, because that is very much what Marriage Story is about. And we get, all kinds of scenes from their marriage. I'll come back to that phrase in a moment, scenes from their marriage. And we get a very, very long, this movie is well over 2 hours long, a very, very long account of the divorce as it unfolds. They really are very fond of each other, but they've also come to realize that they just can't live together. They don't get along that well. There's all kinds of rivalry between them, and that is basically what the movie is. So it's really less a marriage story than a divorce story, even though they're married throughout the entire movie. It takes a long time for this divorce to unfold. They're both involved in the world of show business. He is a theater director. She is an actress who is now becoming a TV actress. She moves out to Los Angeles to make a pilot, which then turns into a series. He is committed to staying in New York, or at least wants to stay in New York to continue working with his theater troupe. That's where some of the rivalry comes in, that they're both in sort of different areas of show business, or maybe I should say the culture industry. Also, there is this big New York versus Los Angeles scenario which begins to develop because they have a child, and they don't like being on opposite coasts from each other, but that is where the marriage and the profession and then the divorce take them. So that's what the movie is all about. Now, I mentioned before I used this phrase, scenes from their marriage. This movie is so influenced by Ingmar Bergman's great film, Scenes from a Marriage. Also, by the way, a very long movie. This movie reminded me of the Bergman film so often, and I think that the title of it, Marriage Story, is a way for Noah Baumbach, the writer-director, to kind of indicate this is not Bergman's film, but it's sort of my version of Bergman's film. He's also said he was influenced by other Bergman cinema, for example, the movie Persona. But this film really is sort of like a sort of skewed American remake of Bergman's great film, Scenes from a Marriage. Marriage Story is, it's long, it's involving. I was caught up in the story, in the narrative, in the emotion all the way through from beginning to end. I was delighted with the supporting cast, which includes Alan Alda as one of the lawyers, Ray Liotta as another one of the lawyers, Laura Dern as another one of the lawyers, Julie Haggerty is in it as a mother and mother-in-law. Wallace Shawn shows up. Always such a pleasure to see Wally Shawn. So it has a wonderful cast, including supporting cast, has an involving story. All of that said, the movie never made me feel really swept away. I enjoyed watching it, but I never really enjoyed watching it. And I have to say, Baumbach often goes for comedy. He has no gift for comedy. The comedy I felt was crude, over-obvious, and did not contribute anything. I was much more taken up with the dramatic elements of the story. That said, I like Marriage Story. There is Oscar buzz galore surrounding this movie, and probably a good deal of that will come true, at least in nominations. Everybody will want to see Marriage Story. I predict that everyone will have a good time watching Marriage Story, but I don't think that it's going to be one of the year's more thrilling movies by the time we get into the home stretch. And that is my slightly mixed picture this week, Jill.
For which we thank you as always. For which we give thanks to you as always, David Sterritt. Films in Focus. The films Atlantics, The Report, and Marriage Story.